Welcome back, chemistry history fans. I am going to quickly try and give you an idea of the expectations for our presentation on these advancements during the Industrial Revolution. So let me share with you my screen. Let's jump right into this. You will notice that I have my PowerPoint introduction slide here. Here we go. 3 individuals going to show equal work with this. I'm going to start with Trent. He's going to introduce us. Hello, my name is Trent, and today I'm going to be talking about polyethylene and the scientist Hans van Pekman and how he came about to discover plastic. Polyethylene is a very fancy word for the plastic that we are using every single day, from the shopping bags that we are polluting the earth with to our plastic bottles that we drink our beverages out of. Every single aspect of society today is surrounded by plastics. We unintentionally developed a more advanced society, but we also are now having to fix it because of this silly advancement that was made by von Pekman. Hans van Pekman is a German scientist from the late 1800s who studied the homologation of phenols and turning them into coumarins. Phenols are important because they are naturally occurring alcohols. They have a higher boiling point than normal alcohols. This will allow for solvents to dissolve into them so that reactions can take place. Coumarins, why he was studying these, are important because they have metabolic medicinal values. They tend to be blood thinners, and they tend to help with some of the processes for pulmonary patients. So he was wanting to develop some of those concepts. Well, accidentally, in the late 1800s, he actually figured out that there was some residue in the bottom of his reaction vessels, and he wanted to find out what they were. He scraped them out, and he figured out that they are very pliable. They're stretchy. They are malleable. They can be shaped into different forms when heated, but they are very resistant to decomposition and acids. And so found that there could be maybe some uses for them. However, it wasn't until a little bit later, several decades later, that it became industrialized, again accidentally, in a process where they are forcing oxygen into a high pressure reaction vessel, and one of the byproducts ended up being mass quantities of these plastics. They then later discovered that we can turn these into packaging for the war efforts. So now I'm going to turn this over to, who am I going to turn this over to? To Jewel, who's going to talk about the science a little bit more. So here we go. Jewel, let's talk about it. Okay, so what von Pekman figured out about polyethylenes when examined under the microscope, that these plastics, the reason why they have these stretchy characteristics to them is that at their heart, they are just a long chain of continuous carbons. And so they have an ability to move about each one of those carbon bonds so that they can stretch. They're only single bonds, and they can also bend because the hydrogens that are on either side of it do not cause repulsion with the bonding electrons. He found that they are very heat resistant, as stated before, that they are durable, and the most important thing is that they are low in cost. These polyethylenes, they form in these little pellets, which we can then melt and mold into any shape. We can stretch them, and they will then, once they cool, stay in the shape that they were given. They do not try to come back to their original forms. All right, so let's then talk to Mr. Gary. Gary, what are you going to talk about? Well, I'm going to talk about the impact on society. And so some of these have already been touched on. I'm just going to re-emphasize them. One of the most important aspects is that during the war effort, we could preserve food. We could send food to the front lines. We could produce food in one city, and we could then transport it without it spoiling, because we now had ways to seal it and protect the air from getting into the food and causing it to get bacteria and spoilage. We also then started to develop more because we had some extra money laying around, toys and decorative features. And so we were able to then start investing in the new film. We were able to make some of our bottles. And so we could transport materials and goods much, much easier. And so one of those ideas about this also is that whenever we are building whenever we are constructing buildings, we can insulate them better. That lowers the energy costs in-house. It cleans up society because we're no longer having to rely just on fossil fuels to heat our homes. And we could now transport fragile items because we figured out ways now with padding instead of natural fibrous materials. We also were able to mass produce some of our tools. And so we also had the ability to make protective gear out of all of this. And then the best part about this is that it started to destroy society. And so that's the downside of this. The biggest impact I think that we're going to see as a society today is that these plastics are now causing pollution because they do not degrade. By its very nature, why it's good is why it is also bad, because unless it is properly recycled and reused, it will take hundreds, if not thousands of years for these materials to decay into its constituent carbon materials again. All right, well, thank you very much for your time, team. These are all of our references in reference to all the topics that we talked about. Thank you so much. Talk to you again soon. Bye-bye.